They're like, no, you got to go out there. So I went out there, and it kind of changed the course of my career. And at one point, after being out there for like a month, making $10 a week with Doug, Derek, the ranch manager, was like, how much? I said, yeah, I get $10. I was like, sold. And so that was it. That the course of my career just went this way. And so I have spent my life or my career with this agency dealing with this interface between ranchers and wolves. That is what we're going to talk about today. So a few warnings. Warning number one, I worked for the agency that eliminated wolves in the past. To their credit, they hired me as the non-lethal wolf specialist researcher. My job was to figure out and promote non-lethal tools. We'll talk about that. Here's warning number two. There's going to be a quiz at the end of this. And I'm not being joking here. There will be a quiz for you guys. So, talk about coexisting with wolves. I can't remember the title, but it's something about silver bullets and gunpowder. You're probably asking, like, what is a silver bullet? I'm not referring to the Lone Ranger. The silver bullet has a kind of meaning that it's a simply magical solution to a complex problem. So why is he applying this to wolves? And why is he referencing gunpowder? I'm not a gun freak, but it does relate to this talk. You'll see that. So a bit of the history, right? And we've been over this. European settlers came in and we eliminated predators. We just took it most out, right? In part done to support agriculture, and that kind of stopped in the 70s. Since the 70s, we have a lot to be proud about in terms of recovery, from wolves to coyotes to black bears, grizzly bears, others. I think we do have some things to celebrate. Wolves are definitely part of that celebration. With the recovery of these species and with our new world, with, 350 million people in the United States, it's a different environment. And I can say any system I work in, whether it's grizzly bears, wolves, black bears, or coyotes, all species, the trends of conflict are upward. And so conflict is a really important component to think about with these species now. Some of these challenges are ancient. Wolves killing livestock, wolves killing guard dogs, things like that. These are ancient problems. Some of them are brand new. Wolves breaking into bears breaking into homes, coyotes attacking people and pets. It's like, wow, who would expect that? Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to focus on sort of this livestock issue. And I can say for sure, ranchers, most of the ranchers I know, they don't hate wolves. They just don't like what they do to their livestock. And some of the rosy picture that Mike Phillips kind of portrays, that's not the world I see. People have impacts. And it's sometimes exaggerated, sometimes it's not. It varies a lot between ranchers. It varies on what the ranchers are doing. It varies on a lot of things, but it does impact them. And to say it doesn't is not the right message. It's not helping. What does society want? And when I say society, I'm looking at you guys. We want less of this. This is kind of day one of my job. Go out to the site in Idaho. Wolf had killed the calf. Person had killed the wolf. And we want more of this, where wolves are kept out of pastures with cattle. This is a tool that Rick Williamson, a guy in Wildlife Services Operation, and I called Fladry, brought over from Europe. We improved it to make it more effective, and now it's called Turbo Fladry. Won't get into details of that, but the point is this is a non-lethal tool. And this is what, this is the great hope of these non-lethal tools, is that we can create systems where we coexist. This is the silver bullet, right? No, it's not. These tools work kind of, okay? All our gadgets good. And this is all stuff I've worked on. When I started, there was a guy named Carter Niemeyer who was like, yeah, you just need these rubber bullets and you need rubber bean bags and you need to scare away things. These work great with wolves. I would go out there with, my gun with rubber bullets and, trying to find a wolf and to scare it away or haze it. I would see one, it's like most people who have this never get to use it. So we started moving into, well, are there other ideas? And so we started these devices. It's a commercially available light. It's pretty effective, but it doesn't solve all your problems, and it will fail pretty quickly. So we try to, how do we turn light devices into you put on the cattle? And so we've made these flags, and these are going to be commercially available. They help some too, but they're not the silver bullet. We can use guard dogs, flattery. We develop sophisticated scare devices that have lights and sounds, and we've used robots, and we've looked at ways to incorporate robotics into our technology. All of this stuff can help, but it is not the solution to most problems. Wolves are smart. They habituate to these devices, and if you use them in the wrong way, they're very effective. So I guarantee after 20 years of this kind of work, it's like, oh my God, I don't think I've made any progress. And it was at a point when I started kind of shifting gears towards in my career, when I started thinking more about like the people that manage livestock, herders, cleaning up of carcass pits, the working with ranchers with really innovative ideas about how to manage their livestock, and range riders that are out on the land. It was like, you know what, this is to make more sense in my career. In fact, I was like, this 20 years of trying to develop technology, probably the biggest waste of time in my life, because I don't think I really had any impact. It's only where it's becoming clear what really the progress that can be made. Point being, stuff can be helpful, but effectiveness is limited. So when we talk about this idea of coexistence, it's a term used very loosely, and I want to define it a little better. Okay, what we're talking about is carnivores that have a sustainable, robust population, humans that are not being put out of business, they're having a thriving business, so we're not putting people that are having to live with these carnivores out of business. Conflict, the conflict between the wolves and the ranchers or the people, we minimize that. But also the social conflict. Can we minimize the angst between rooms like this and rooms like ranchers who may get into big fights and may spend a lot of time and energy debating in real negative ways the merits of wolves? Reduce that conflict. And if we can have all of that, that's what I define as coexistence. And by defining it in this way, we can say, okay, here we've hit this mark. We're getting closer to coexistence. So we're really trying to have a better definition of this term, something more robust that we can measure. And I want to give you a couple examples of what I think are good examples of coexistence. And this comes out of work with particular ranchers, and one of which is in Oregon. And the person I'm going to talk to, his name is Keith Krebs. He's a fifth generation sheep rancher. And I met him at a Defenders of Wildlife conference probably like 6 years ago. And he and I sat and drank a bottle of wine, and this was like okay, this guy's he's full of these interesting ideas. He is impacted by wolves in Oregon, but he's got some really unique ideas. And it was at that point where we formed this relationship. And I want to just show a film or not a film, but a short clip that kind of speaks to how he looks at this and why I think he's an important person.
I graze my sheep at 5,000 feet in the middle of Oregon's largest concentration of wolves. And it's not just the wolves. We're also dealing with bears, cougars, and coyotes. To run sheep on this landscape, we have to coexist. We're using a mixture of biological deterrents known for centuries and innovations that generations before us could only have dreamed of. GPS and woven wire fence and fox lights. Because of our efforts in coexistence, we continue to find methods to reduce the stress on our livestock. Sheep contribute to a healthy ecosystem by eating grass, reducing the risk of wildfires, and cycling nutrients back into the soil. A balanced ecosystem is about all lives living together. There are people that want an apex predator on the landscape. We want a natural fiber that is American. And I feel coexistence is managing to those beliefs and needs. Because of our efforts in coexistence, we continue to find methods to reduce the stress on our livestock. It's the right and I'm Cameron Krebs. And I'm committed to improving this landscape and this industry for future generations.
Okay, that's example number one. A little side story. Cameron Krebs, I got invited to Italy to be part of this program over there. And they asked, do you know any ranchers that could come to Italy with you? And I was like, yeah, I got a good buddy. And so I invited Cameron. And we went to Italy. He wore his cowboy hat. And it was like, I'm going to be the big guy out there, And God, the guy totally stole my thunder, man. He was wearing this cowboy hat. Everybody fell in love with Cameron and his cowboy hat. So if you ever go to Italy, I recommend wearing a cowboy hat. Next example comes out of Montana. This one's pretty well known. I'm guessing there's some folks who know what I'm talking about when I talk about Blackfoot Challenge. It's a system in Montana. So here's the state of Montana. The Blackfoot Challenge is mapped in this red line. And it is started by ranchers. And it was not started to deal with predators. It started to deal with that this community of ranchers were individually. So it involved NGOs, it involved state, federal agencies, right? Everybody. It's been this really significant model of how to solve problems on the land. Existence for 30 or so years. Started moving in, and I don't know, halfway through their existence, and they're like, oh, wolves and grizzly bears are starting to move into our land. What are we going to do? And so approaching the issue of grizzly bear landscape, this cooperative in place, and they are now a model of how do we deal with these wolves and carnivores on our ranching land. To give a little bit of indication, I think is coexistent. This green line represents the growing wolf population within that population, right? So it started around 2007 when wolves started moving in, and the ranching community was freaking out. The red is the number of wolves that have been lethally removed from this system during this time period. And the blue is the number of livestock killed by wolves. This is probably as good as you're going to get with coexisting with wolves. We have really low removal or really low livestock loss. We have also really low removal of wolves. And we have a sustainable wolf population. And it's such a successful program. We're now, CW is bringing folks from Blackfoot down. We're bringing ranchers up there, like to do this rancher exchange for people in Colorado to start kind of getting some new ways of thinking going in Colorado. This is pretty hard to replicate. This is something that is inspiring and yet kind of daunting. But it offers, in my mind, something. And I want to talk, in terms of like what's the most important aspect of these two examples. It's two things in my mind. One is this idea of night pinning. And so what Cameron does with his sheep in Oregon, another rancher I haven't talked about in Idaho, does the same thing. They protect their livestock at night. And they do it by putting up this fencing. And this fencing is not necessarily to keep predators out, but to keep their livestock in. And so half acre, this is maybe an acre and a half. There's 400-500 cows in this during the night. There's 1,000 sheep in these night pens. So they move all their animals in at night, and then they can start using things like fox lights and these deterrents that I've been working on. Those become really effective, but they have herders, they have guard dogs out there. It's this mix of ancient practices of herding, of managing your livestock, combined with our technology. This program is really successful. These folks in Idaho started this because of wolves. They haven't lost a single cow to wolves in 15 years. Has not lost any sheep to any predators in 12 years at night while his sheep are in the night pens. A bit of daytime. Very small. Okay. So you combine that with this practice and these practices of range riding and some livestock management that Matt is really keen on a lot. These are the important practices, and you start combining that with the technology. That's when we start really we're after. So that's my presentation. First quiz question: what is the silver bullet? No. Combination of tactics? Nope. What is it? Wait. One more time. Raise your hand. I can't. Everybody's saying something. No silver bullet. I disagree with you. Coexist? No. Coexist. What is silver bullet? No. Nope. Doug's wrong. As usual. What is it? Conversation. You're getting closer.
Coexisting.
No, sir. Result. It's the people. It's the rancher. That's the silver bullet, you guys. So I know your perspective because I was like looking at that film going, oh my God, these guys are going to kill me. So I feel what you're feeling. But if you guys hate the rancher, you're going the wrong direction. Okay? Now, that said, we can't just give ranchers like, yeah, you guys are wonderful. It's a really tricky problem, right? How do we get people like Cameron or other ranchers to move in this direction, really thinking about, instead of like managing wolves, let's start thinking about managing livestock? It's a really tricky conversation, even for me who I work for USDA. You guys don't even try that conversation, all right? Because it's really hard. And so there's a lot of ranchers on this landscape in Colorado. Not all of them are going to buy into this. Some hate wolves. Most of them don't hate wolves. They hate seeing their livestock killed by wolves. And a few of them are real early adopters and really innovative. Okay? So, all right, quiz question number 2. What is the gunpowder? No. So the gunpowder is what's going to propel that silver bullet. How are we going to get that silver bullet? If the rancher is the silver bullet, how are we going to get the silver bullet in motion? Education, listening, discussions, maybe
Energy.
compensation. Yeah, all that's maybe okay. What I'm looking for, you guys, is like I'm looking at all of you. You guys are the gunpowder. Okay? If the ranchers are the silver bullet, you have to be part of propelling that silver bullet. And the question I don't have answers for is how do you do that? And I guarantee it's not go tell the rancher what to do. I saw this guy talk from USDA and he said do this. That is not what I'm saying. But you might think about like if you eat beef, do you buy the cheap package or do you buy a package from Alder Springs in Idaho who are doing this kind of stuff? How do we incentivize this instead of incentivizing ranchers finding dead stuff? These are bigger questions I don't have answers to, but that's the gunpowder, and you guys are the gunpowder. And so you have jobs to do. Doug gave you a job. I'm giving you a job. So you're coming out here with a lot of jobs. You also have Willow monitoring jobs. You guys are busy. So I think I'm out of time, and I'll leave it with that.